So it's really an honor for the National Conflict Resolution Center to be affiliated with these great schools, the La Jolla Country Day and the Price School. I see Scott Barden there. We've worked with the schools over the years, and it's really a pleasure for us to be involved. And also the City Club. The City Club is really a very special institution. It's dedicated to the dialogue of democracy, and it was formed in 1975. I was just a young lad back then, and it's over 1,000 programs that have occurred because of George Mitrovich. And it's special that we can see these programs. It's remarkable. Not only can he mix in baseball, Yugoslavian history, but if you listen closely, once in a while we'll hear some ancient Greek philosophers from the 6th century that will be quoted. So the National Conflict Resolution Center as well, it focuses on dialogue and democracy and trying to push society to become more civil. And communication and collaboration are the bedrock of a civil society. And we are fortunate that we are moving forward as a city with another opportunity with a new election. And we look forward to greater collaboration among our community leaders, our students, our government leaders, and our business leaders with the new incoming administration. So it's really my honor at this point to introduce to you Nathan Fletcher. Nathan Fletcher has a very impressive background. He's currently the Senior Director at Qualcomm in Corporate Development. We all know he was a former State Assembly representative with California's 75th District. He drafted Chelsea's Law along with authoring 30 different pieces of legislation that have now been signed into law. From 2004 to 2007, he was in the Marine Corps, serving as a counterintelligence, human intelligence specialist. And while a Marine, he won several awards, including, or was given awards, including the Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal with Combat V for Valor and the Iraq Campaign Medal. He received his degree from California Baptist University. So it's now my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you Nathan Fletcher.
Thank you. Good morning. Oh, City Club's tired this morning. Good morning, guys. How are you? Good morning. I want to thank my good friend George. We share a number of things in common. One is a love of baseball. What actually led me to my college was a baseball scholarship. I had an academic and a baseball scholarship, and I played there, and I was absolutely convinced I was going to be a big league baseball player, which clearly didn't work out so well for me. I was not nearly as good as I thought I was when I was 17. But I was telling George, I still play as well in the adult hardball leagues. I took a little break for the campaign, but was out playing. And he asked what position. I'm a catcher. I like to say the only position. I would walk up to the third baseman and ask, "Where is your ticket stub?" And he'd say, "What?" And I said, I know they didn't let you in this game for free. I'm like, "You don't even play. You're a third baseman. You just stand there." But certainly a great love of baseball. A tremendous sport, a very social sport, a sport that encourages conversation, the only sport where the defense has the ball. There's so many fascinating, interesting things about the game of baseball, which I love. And then the other thing we obviously share is the love of our city, and it's an honor to be here with you today. I also want to recognize my friend Rick Gentry from the Housing Commission doing amazing work down there. We're trying to hopefully get you some more help and assistance, so hang in there. And of course, Mr. Williams, who has met with me several times to give me some advice and guidance, which I appreciate. It's an interesting time in San Diego. Everything that happened over the course of the last year is something that I think all of us are ready to put behind us and move on. It does carry over a little bit. Somebody came up to me and they said, "It's a great time to be the mayor." And I launched into all the things that we wanted to do and why it was a great time. And they said, no. They said, the bar is very low. They said, you won't have trouble being successful. And I kind of chuckled about it. And then a lot of folks have said, hey, it's kind of like a redo. You were right there. And then, who knew, a year later, you'd be back in the middle of it all. And there's a funny story about my son, Zach, my oldest boy, who's now 5. And it's just kind of a cute story. He reminds me of somebody came into our campaign office, and there's this huge poster of Lightning McQueen. Now, if you have children or grandchildren, you've probably seen the movie Cars about 600 times. If not, it's a Disney talking race car, Lightning McQueen, and it's a cute movie. It's a kids' movie. It's interesting. But after the election last time, we didn't change. Home life didn't change a bit. We lost, but everything went on the same. And my boy was really little. He was just over 4 at the time. And he knew daddy's signs. He would talk about yard signs and things, but I didn't think he really grasped what was going on in the election. And so, we lost in the primary and went about our daily life as normal. And about a week and a half later, I get home. And every night at bedtime, we do the exact same routine. We brush our teeth, and I play a song on the radio, and we dance while we brush our teeth. That's how we brush for 3 minutes. And then we get in bed, we say our prayers, we read 3 books, and we go to bed. And it's the same every single night, same time, same routine. So I get home, and I'm going to do bedtime, and he's all excited, and he goes, Daddy, and he's holding a book. I picked out the book, and he's very insistent, Daddy, this book. And I said, buddy, you pick out the book every night. Daddy, this book. I said, okay, so we brush our teeth, we do our little dance thing, and then we get in there, and we say our prayers, we start reading the book, and it was the book Cars 2, which was the sequel to Cars. So I got this book, Daddy, I'm like, okay. So I start reading it. And in the race, Lightning McQueen, the race car, he's doing this race in Japan, and he ends up losing the race. And then the series goes to Italy for the second race. And in the second race, Lightning McQueen's racing, and it's close, and Lightning McQueen wins the race. And I go to turn the page, and my boy, who was just 4 at the time, he put his hand on the page, and he goes, no, Daddy, I got this book for you. I said, what? He goes, I got it for you, Daddy. He said, you just need to be like Lightning McQueen. You just have to race again. And it was the sweetest thing, I'd ever seen. But I certainly, I don't think anyone ever expected to be back in this situation. But there is a huge opportunity. And there is a great opportunity, and I want to be the mayor. There's no other job I would leave my existing life for. I wouldn't leave it to go back to the legislature. I wouldn't leave it to go back to Congress. But I want to be the mayor of San Diego. And I want to be the mayor that rebuilds our city. And that is the opportunity for the next mayor. The opportunity for the next mayor is to demonstrate leadership, to demonstrate drive, to go out and push a forward-looking agenda, and to make sure we do some things that have lingered for a long time. And what I want to do as mayor really just falls into 2 simple categories. The first is rebuilding the foundation that we build our city upon. We had a lot of conversation. I don't know if you read the Union Tribune or not. I would encourage you not to. Just saying, I would encourage you not to. But if you do, maybe for entertainment value, that's what I say. We spent 2 days of this mayor's race talking about school report cards. I'm serious. We talked about school report cards for 2 days. And I'm glad Kevin Faulkner was a C student at San Diego State. But that's not what this race is about. The report card in this race is a simple fact that we've gone from the 8th worst roads in America to the 4th worst roads in America. Now, think about that. Let's put that in context. That's comparing us with roads in Michigan and Detroit and Alaska. When it rained earlier this week, that's about as bad as the weather gets. Our roads are cheaper to maintain. They're easier to maintain. We've seen a lack of investment in the basic things. The other report card is 37,000 911 calls in the last 2 years alone have not been answered in time. 37,000. Now think about if that's you. If that's someone breaking into your home. If that's your child who's choking. And there are fewer economic opportunities for the middle class today than there were in the past, and there's no comprehensive citywide economic development strategy for how we address that. And that's what this election's about. This election's about who is going to have the leadership and the plan and the vision to bring us out of that. And we laid out a neighborhood investment plan, where as mayor, I want to spend all of 2014 going into every neighborhood and every community in San Diego and coming up with a list of everything that has not been done. This week, if you took your children trick-or-treating, I took mine. It was cute. My oldest was Captain America. My baby was Elmo. Elmo's the only word my baby knows, so it was appropriate. But we went out, we live not too far from here, and we had a wonderful evening. But you know, there's a lot of communities in San Diego where parents took their children out in pitch black darkness because there's not a single streetlight. Not one. You know, there's a lot of communities in San Diego where they took their kids out trick-or-treating and walking through the streets because there's no sidewalks. There's no sidewalks. And I promise you, if you live in a community where there's no sidewalk and no streetlight, you don't understand how every conversation's about a stadium. And we have to demonstrate that basic level of commitment that folks expect. And so we're going to make a list, A to Z, of the streets, the sidewalks, the sewer systems. We have a huge problem with our stormwater system. We have a problem with the Point Loma waste treatment facility. The problem is we pump millions of gallons of sewage into the ocean every day. We're the last city in America that continues to seek waivers from the Federal Clean Water Act. We have to get serious as a city about addressing these issues because this is the foundation we build a great city upon. We'll spend 2014 creating the list. We'll create a financing plan, and then we'll have an honest conversation. Because if we want to rebuild our city, we're going to have to pay for it. And we're going to have to go out and have an honest conversation about how we do that. Simultaneous with that is the simple reality that we have to address our public safety crisis. You know, when I talked about how there's been an inequity in the delivery of basic services, this is also true in public safety. When you look at those 37,000 911 calls, it's not equally dispersed lateness. If you live in some communities, they get there in 7.5 minutes. It's average. If we strive for average, then we're doing okay in those communities. But there's a lot of other communities where you wait 9.5 minutes for a first responder. They're primarily poor communities. They're primarily communities of color. And as a city, that's immoral. One person's child is not worth less than the other because of the neighborhood that they live in. And we have to address that as well as a part of our neighborhood plan. And we can do it. We can do it. We're a country that put a man on the moon and brought him back, which was equally hard bringing him back. I had some engineer tell me bringing him back was harder than getting him there. This is probably important if you were the person who was standing on the moon that you have a plan to get back. But a country that figured out how to do that can figure out how to pave its streets, can figure out how to make sure you have clean water, can figure out how to make sure you have a street light, and make sure, heaven forbid, in the event you call 911, you have a first responder that shows up in time. We can do that. And I think that is the task ahead for the next mayor. The second thing that we need to do, and this is the second other thing I want to do, we want to rebuild our neighborhoods. And the second thing I want to do is relaunch an actual economic development plan for our city. Now, this is important because we're coming up on a centennial celebration, 2015. And I think that we ought to spend the entirety, after we do neighborhoods for 2014, have a plan, have a financing mechanism, figure out how we're going to fund it, show by name list of projects. Then let's spend 2015 talking about what the next 100 years of San Diego looks like. What does the next 100 years look like? And it's interesting because if you travel and you tell someone you're from San Diego, what is the first thing they know? The weather. The weather. It doesn't matter where you go. I was in a Cambodian village. I was like, where are you from? And I'm like, San Diego. He's like, oh, I know this place. You have very nice weather. I'm like, how do you know that? How is that what you know? But it doesn't matter. That's what they know. And so I pulled weather charts for 100 years. You know, the weather is not different here than Los Angeles. It's the same weather pattern. It's no different. It's no different. So why is that what they know? But globally, that's what we're doing. I was in Korea. I was having a conversation. I'm from San Diego. They said, oh, we love San Diego. I said, oh, that's great. They said, we go to Los Angeles, we do business, and then we go to the zoo on our way home. Now, we're more than the zoo. Now, I love the zoo. Please don't tweet or text that I said so. I love the zoo. I take my boys all the time. I love it. And our tourism economy is an important part of who we are. But we're more than just a convention destination. And the reason that everyone knows that is because that's who we branded ourselves as. And that's who we said we are. And almost every public policy decision we've made has aligned to promote that. And I support that. It's the third anchor of our economic development tree. But in 1972, there was a national political convention that was coming to San Diego. And then they changed their mind. After announcing they were coming here, they changed their mind. And they said, you're not a very good city to take a convention. We're going to go to Miami instead. It was a devastating blow, particularly to our convention and tourism business. And so the city proclaimed, they created the phrase, America's finest city. which had never existed until that time. America's finest city, the best place to bring your convention, your travel, your tourism. We have the best weather in the world. And everyone laughed and chuckled and said, well, you're clearly not, because you just lost a major convention. But we beat that every single day for almost 40 years now. And it's time for an update. It's time for a refresher. And so I want to replace that and spend 2015 rebranding as the world's most innovative city, the world's most creative city, because that is the future of where we're headed. You know, for the longest time, we were an agrarian society as a country, and then we became an industrial society. And when we made that change, it displaced 85% of the workforce. And then we went from being an industrial society to now being an innovative society. And it's a disruptive, difficult, hard change. But it's a change that we have to embrace. And there are tremendous opportunities by embracing that industry to be the place that finds the solutions that improve healthcare, that help provide technologies that help teachers teach and students learn, to be the place that finds solutions to renewable energy and alternative sources of energy that reduce carbon emissions and help address global climate change. We can be the place that helps ensure that a world that is full of information provides that information in a smart, usable way. We, San Diego, can be the place that finds the solutions to a lot of the great challenges that plague our world. And we want to embrace that. And we have a whole, in our jobs plan, we have a whole series of things we do, from an event in San Diego branding campaign to things we do with incubators and startups. And there's a huge opportunity there. And you know the other upside of an innovative economy? They're good paying jobs. I know I have one of those good paying jobs. We spend a lot of time talking about how good paying my job is. And I want you to have a good paying job too. And we want more of those here. But the simple reality is that for a lot of our society, seeing the path from where they are to a good paying, innovative job is a path that they can't see. I joked the other day in a debate that at Qualcomm there's one job for a politician who can't win. I have it. I'm hoping not to keep it. But other than that, you need an advanced engineering degree. And for a lot of our society, seeing the path from where they are to an advanced engineering degree is out of reach. And so the other 2/3 of our jobs plan and our vision for San Diego focuses on building that balanced economy that we need. Because the simple reality is, over the course of the recession in the last 10 years, we have seen a complete erosion of the middle class. And this is not ideological, this is math. We have a greater disparity in income and wealth levels than at any point in our country's history. In the recovery in the last few years, we've seen the average hourly wages of American workers go down. And if we don't do something as a society to tackle that and address that issue, we are going to lose what it means to say the American dream exists. Because the whole point of the American dream is that you have equality of access to a better future. There's nothing in the American dream that says you get equality of outcome. There's nothing that says everyone gets the same size house or the same car. There's nothing in the American dream that says you get equality of ease. It will always be harder for some kids than others. It will be easier for my boys than it was for me. That's okay. But what there is the promise of equality of access to the American dream. And access to the American dream means that every child has access to a quality public education. And it means that people that want to work hard and take risk will have access to an economic opportunity that can give them a better life. And rarely in the American dream does somebody go from abject poverty to great wealth. It's usually a generational climb up an economic ladder. And when you lose the middle class and the working class, you lose that ladder and you lose that opportunity. And so I've said the second thing that we want to do in our economic plan is have a real focus on manufacturing. The president said in the State of the Union address that over 500,000 manufacturing jobs have come back to America in the last few years, and he's right. Ford has brought them back, Caterpillar's brought them back, Intel has created a high-tech manufacturing center, Apple wants to build ice stuff here. And there's a number of reasons for it. Some of it has to do with energy cost and fuel costs, some of it has to do with currency, some has to do with intellectual property theft. Some has to do with the simple fact that the American worker remains strong and smart and hardworking and productive. And I've said as mayor, we want to be the place that says we want those high-tech manufacturing jobs here. We have a lot of land in the Otay Mesa border. We want to partner with our friends in Mexico. We want to view ourselves as a region. We want to get you to invent the idea here and then make the product. If you won't make the product here in San Diego, we want you to make it in the northern part of Mexico, because that still benefits the regional economy. And then we want to take those products and we want to sell them to the 90% of the world's customers who live outside of America via our ports. Also good paying working class, middle class jobs. Because as much as we need to address the inequity in neighborhoods and public safety, we need to do the exact same thing in the inequity of economic opportunities. And if we do nothing but those two things, rebuild our neighborhoods and launch our economic development plan, we will have done something very special for San Diego. And I think that there will be an opportunity that 40 or 50 years from now, people will look back and say that group of people at that time, they got it right. They didn't just sit and watch the status quo go by. They actually talked about some big ideas, some big challenges. But in order to do that, you need a mayor who is going to demonstrate leadership. And I believe my track record shows that. Whether it was serving in combat, where we literally made life and death decisions, at times under direct enemy fire. I was trying to, funny story, I was trying to get a Navy corpsman. There are medics or kind of doctors in the Marine Corps when you're a Marine, a job at a company, and the person was saying, well, I don't understand how his experience carries over to working at our company. And I said, I watched a 19-year-old Navy corpsman do a full tracheotomy of a kid in a ditch while we were dodging mortars and RPGs, and bullets were kicking up in the dirt around us, and radios were squawking, and there were fire burning. And they said, well, how is that going to help us at our company? And I said, if you hire him and the email server goes down, he's not going to freak out. He's like, I got this. I got this. And I think that experience is useful in the office of mayor. Having been in those stressful environments, having been in those difficult environments, having had to make those decisions. I demonstrated in the State Assembly that we can actually bring people together and solve problems. We demonstrated it time and again, whether it was legislation to help people keep their health care, whether it was legislation like Chelsea's Law to protect children, whether it was legislation to fight for San Diego money to make sure that it gets invested in projects here. Time and again, we demonstrated that ability to identify a problem, bring a group of folks together, sometimes a divergent group of folks, sometimes different, drive through and find a solution. And then even in the last year at Qualcomm, we showed that. Early on, I was asked, we have a big problem with immigration reform. We need it. We need to make the case for it. They said, get together as diverse a group of folks as you can find and get agreement on a statement of shared principles. And so we brought in labor, we brought in the business community, I brought in faith leaders, from very conservative black pastors to very progressive rabbis. I brought in the ACLU, and then just for fun, I brought in law enforcement. Just for fun. And you know what we did? We argued for 3 weeks about each word in the statement of principles. And then you know what happened? We got to an agreement. And we all stood together. And we said it's in our shared interest for a lot of individual reasons, but we stand here today supporting comprehensive immigration reform. I've also learned at Qualcomm how large organizations work. Organizations larger than the city of San Diego, and I've been mentored and guided. And I'm ready to put all of that to work for the city of San Diego because I know that there's so much that we can do. Somebody said they also wanted a mayor who could bring all of the parties together. They said they want a mayor who could unite all of the parties. And I said, well, then you should support me because I've been in all of the parties. I've been in them all. And, you know, it's a fair question. It's a fair conversation to have. I was never a very good Republican. They will tell you that, or at least they would tell you that when I was a Republican. Now they have a different story. But, you know, I was never very good there. And I watched a Republican Party that changed significantly in the last 10 years. And no offense to any individual Republicans, but the party leadership has changed. They've driven out everyone who supported women's access to health. They've driven out people that supported equal rights. They've driven out people that supported treating our immigrant community with compassion. They've driven out people that wanted to have honest, fiscally responsible conversations about budgets and taxes, and they have changed. But I'm also comfortable saying over the same time frame, so have I. Our life experience shapes who we are. And there's this part of politics. I remember watching an interview with a member of Congress who said, I've been in office for 27 years and I've never changed a position on a single issue ever. 27 years. I'm like, you didn't learn anything in 27 years. You didn't talk to anyone you had never talked to. You didn't meet a community that you never understood or shared their perspective or where they came from. And over the course of the last 10 years, I went to war, I came back, and I watched my friends not get the care and the treatment that they deserve. And that changes how you view things in a very personal way. I became a father. My oldest started kindergarten this year. And you realize that his year in kindergarten is the only year he has to do kindergarten for his whole life. It's his only year. And he doesn't get to say, you know what, Daddy, I'm going to wait until funding levels come back and then I'll do kindergarten. That's not a choice. But that's true for every child, regardless of their grade. And I governed in a tremendous recession where we saw the erosion of the middle class, we saw the impacts of things, and those change you. And I'm comfortable as a Democrat. But what doesn't change is the approach you bring, which is a willingness to work with people regardless of their party. There's a willingness to get out front and lead, to build coalitions, to drive a conversation, to move public opinion, and to make a real difference for our city. And that's why I want to be your mayor, and those are the things that I want to do. But I can't do it alone. I need a lot of help and a lot of support, and I appreciate each of you giving me the opportunity to come out and share with you for a few minutes. So thank you very, very much for having me. I appreciate it. And I'd be happy to take any questions. Oh, okay. Perfect. Questions? Yes, ma'am. I'll repeat it first.
If you become mayor, would you spend taxpayer money on a new stadium for the Chargers?
Yeah, so I got to repeat the question for the microphone. The question was, if I become mayor, would I spend taxpayer money for a new stadium? Couple things, and I'm going to answer your question directly. I said we've got to do the neighborhood investment plan before we begin any stadium conversations, because if you live in those neighborhoods, you don't understand the conversation. And we've got to demonstrate to San Diegans we're going to do the basic things first. And then the second thing is I've said we're not going to spend city general fund dollars on a stadium. And the reason is city general fund dollars are there to provide libraries and rec centers and police and fire and streets and the basic things that our residents expect. Now, is there a way we can have a conversation that makes sense? I do. I think there is. And this is the way that I've framed it. I've never understood, and I've yet to see a good economic analysis of a city that built a massive coliseum to play football in 10 times a year, where it made economic sense. I mean, maybe they do other things there. I took my boys to the monster truck show. They love monster trucks. It was okay. So you play football and then you do monster trucks. And then every 5 years, U2 comes here and they sell out a stadium. But that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that just doesn't make sense why we would build something so massive and so huge to use so little, so few times. And so what I've said is, look, let's take a look. Let's be more creative. If you have a problem, make it bigger. So how do we do maybe like Indianapolis did, where they put a roof on it? Now in San Diego, we'd have a retractable roof because as we covered it in nauseam, our weather's very nice. But if you put a retractable roof on it, all of a sudden, you can use it for a whole lot of things. You could get Final Four. You could get major art conferences. You could get major shows. You could get maybe a political convention wants to come back. You could have spillover space for standalone conventions. You could do all kinds of things in a facility that I believe you could use 300 or 350 days a year. Maybe we have a conversation about how you consolidate the operations of the sports arena, which is underutilized because it's not very nice. It's not in a very nice area of town. Well, maybe you consolidate those. And you have a facility that you use 300, 350 days a year. Now, if you do that, then all of a sudden the conversation isn't how much does the city pay, it's how much does the city make. Because the current conversation is framed on people going through those gates 15 times a year, which means they're parking and concession and gate. But imagine if people are going through those gates 300 times a year. Now all of a sudden we have a situation where we can make it work. But then let's have an even broader conversation. A lot of people care passionately about the Chargers, and I respect that. It's a part of San Diego. It's a part of our culture. They've been here for a long time. We want them to stay. We want them to stay. But how do we make sure this is a conversation that's relevant for people who that may not be their highest interest? And so I've said you have a great facility there at the current Qualcomm site where there's already transit. Imagine the park we could build on the banks of the San Diego River. Imagine an area where we could put some affordable housing, where there's already transit there. Imagine maybe what we did with the sports arena site, where we create a workforce training center. You know, we have a real problem in that we have a lot of San Diegans who want to work hard, but they don't have the skills for today's economy. So how do we work with the workforce partnership in our community colleges to create a center where people get trained? And I think if you take a number of those issues and you put them together, you're open and honest about the financing, about where it goes. You say we're not using city general fund dollars. Then I think that there's a way that we could absolutely do something that is good for San Diego, that makes economic sense, that's good for us, and that people, whether they're football fans or not, see a tremendous benefit from. Yeah.
As you know, I'm a recently separated veteran, and it took me about 5 months to find a job in in San Diego, which is the highest concentration of military and veterans in the country.
Yep.
Do you have a vision, or the city of San Diego has a policy right now on veterans hiring, but it's kind of like a paper tight.
Yeah.
So do you have a vision for what's your vision for?
Well, I mean, first off, this is one that, I mean, it's we all have issues that are kind of personal to us and our life experience, and I think what we do after every war with our veterans is shameful, and we seem to keep doing it. I mean, if we have the moral authority to send young men and women to war, we have the moral obligation to take care of them when they come back. And if we have the money to send them to war, then we have the money to take care of them when they came back. And one of my greatest frustrations ever with my previous party was this debate over the GI Bill for the 21st century. I'm like, you don't want to pay for their college? You don't want to, you took young 18-year-old kids from suburban San Diego who had lived very comfortable lives. I grew up in a very hard-scrapping, blue-collar, working-class family. These kids came to boot camp. They'd never been punched in the mouth before. And we send them through boot camp. And then we send them to a year of combat where their first difficulty in life is an unimaginable, horrific thing that they'll deal with for the rest of their life, forever. And then we send them back, and we send them back, and we send them back. These wars were the longest wars in the history of America. And then they come back, and we wonder why they have trouble. You know, we've got to do a better job, and that's more than just the city government. As a society, we have to do a better job. Because whether you support or oppose the war, that 18-year-old kid was just trying to serve his country. And we want to encourage people to serve their country, and I don't think we do a good job. So I think the city can play a leadership role in actually promoting and making sure that we're welcoming veterans. And veterans have a sense of service. They want to serve. They want to make a difference. No one joins the military for the money, right? No one, joins the military for the haircut, right? They join because they care about their country, because they want to serve. And I think we should honor that. And so the city can do more to promote its hiring policy and do that. But the mayor can also be a leader in terms of helping homeless veterans, helping veterans transition back, helping push our private sector leaders to hire more veterans. And I think that's certainly an area that I care about deeply, and I think about every single day when I think about my buddies. It's something I would work on. Joe.
The GM of the La Valencia has asked me to ask you, Sergeant Ed Harris of the Lifeguard Service, whom you know, said on any given day there's 600 sea lions and 400 seals, and the stench is back in La Jolla, and it's a tourism hotspot. Now, the last mayor did make some progress, but apparently they're getting the runaround by 3 different departments of the city. But would you be willing to address that issue again, the stench of the bird and animal waste problem in La Jolla?
Yeah, this is one of the dumbest issues I've ever seen. Yeah, so the question was about the bird poop in La Jolla and the smell. It's horrible. If you've been down there, it's horrible. And I here again, I mean, not to oversimplify a complicated problem, but let's go back to the Apollo project. I mean, we put a man on the moon. We put a man on the moon. And okay, and let's just bear with me for 1 second. I was taking a tour in the Bay Area, and somebody said, do you realize that your iPhone has the computing power of the entire Apollo project? I said, I have the Apollo project in my pocket? I mean, think about that. Now, I got to think in a world where we're that much smarter with that much more technology, we can figure out how to clean up bird poop. I mean, I got to think that we can. And I think in some of these instances, it takes a strong mayor, right? I wouldn't think profiles encourage be taking a stand on bird poop, but sometimes you got to push. You need a pushy mayor. You need an impatient mayor. Because I'll tell you that, and no offense to my friends who are lawyers, but a lot of times bureaucracy is like lawyers. There's always a reason why you can't do anything. It doesn't matter what you say. Nope, 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 nope. No, clean up the bird poop. Clean it up. Let's figure it out. We did it once. We can certainly do it again. So, but you got to be engaged. You got to be willing to roll up your sleeves. And this is important, I think, not just particularly to this issue, but this is important. The morale of our city workforce has been decimated. It's been decimated. And it's been decimated because they've been blamed for a lot of mistakes that politicians created. I mean, politicians created the problem. And politicians chose to give benefits that were too high and retroactive, which doesn't make financial sense. The same politicians chose to take money out of the pension fund to pay for a convention and build a ballpark. Equally wrong. Equally wrong. And so now we spend a lot of time attacking and tearing down our city workers, and we wonder why their morale is low. You know, one of the first things I learned at Qualcomm, as I was learning how they work, is we do these climate surveys. We survey all of the employees. And you know what we ask them? We ask them how happy they are. Are you happy? Do you feel motivated? Are you inspired? Do you know why you come to work? Do you know what your purpose is? And I thought, well, that's great. We have happy employees. Makes us feel good. They go, no. It's good business. It's good business. Because a happy, motivated, inspired employee is a productive employee. It's an employee that gives you voluntary effort, that stays a few minutes over, that thinks about their job on the weekends. And I have seen in the military, I've seen in government, I've seen in the private sector that the culture and the tone gets set at the top. And it quickly gets reflected. And we need a mayor that's going to come in and get all the city workers together and say, I appreciate you. I value you. You are the folks that teach our children how to read in libraries. You're the folks that pick up our trash. You're the people that if someone breaks in my house late at night, comes running in, knowing there's a dangerous person there. We value you. And when we build a great city, you're going to be the one that's built it. Now, we're not going to tolerate corruption. We're not going to tolerate laziness. We're not going to tolerate excuses about why we can't move forward. And as a city, we're going to start moving forward together. And I want you leaning forward. I want to tackle problems. I want to solve problems. You're going to make mistakes. And when you make a mistake, you're going to have a mayor who's going to stand up and who's going to say, we made a mistake. It was an honest one. We were trying to do the right thing, but we made a mistake. And when you have success, you're going to have a mayor who's going to promote you and say, look at what our city department did. And why is it good? And I think that a lot of folks in the city right now are just paralyzed. They're afraid to do anything because there's been so much uncertainty and so much turmoil and so much change. And that we have an opportunity to fix as well. Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask, what actual impact in terms of determining the vote do you think the Union Tribune has?
So the question was, what impact does a Union Tribune have? Man, I'm hoping not very much. Look, it's frustrating. I mean, I'm going to be honest. It's frustrating. It's frustrating when you have one major paper whose owner is the single largest owner against me. I mean, it's frustrating. And so you get these environments where an attack mailer gets launched that says something that's not true. So my favorite was I have this no-show job at Qualcomm. Right? Oh, he doesn't show up to work. So they get a screenshot of a database that I don't use. It has nothing to do with my job. And they say, oh, you've been offline for 31 days. And I'm like, I don't use that. That has nothing to do with my job. And we give them a list of all the other executives. Paul Jacobs has been offline for 1,100 days. Pretty sure he's been coming to work. He runs the company. But we gave him a list, and we said that's just not true, that you can't use that. But then Doug Manchester pays the Lincoln Club to put it in an attack mailer. And then the UT runs a big headline that says, Fletcher denies no-show job. What do you do? Now that ad then gets cited in more attack ads that are paid for by the same guy. I mean, it's maddening. And it's not just the editorial page, right? It spills over into how many times we rewrite and write the same stories with things that aren't accurate. And so, you know, the only thing I can hope for, I mean, I don't have an interest group that's giving me $1 million, and I don't have the paper, but I have a lot of people who care about our city, and I'm counting on them. And I'm counting on them to go out every single day and help us push back and fight. It's funny, I told somebody that you have the Lincoln Club, which is named after Abraham Lincoln, who was known as Honest Abe. I'm pretty sure he wants his name back. I'm pretty sure he wants his name back because you just can't lie. You can't say things that are not true. My other favorite one is, I missed 60% of the days in the assembly. 60% of the days I wasn't in Sacramento voting. Do you know why? Because 3/4 of those days there was not a single vote being cast. Not one. Not one. But it doesn't fit into a good narrative. And so all I can do is go out every single day, and we're taking hits from all sides. I think Democratic voters, hopefully, are smart enough to understand that when Doug Manchester funds a group to tell them that I'm really a Republican, they should understand what's going on there. I mean, I think you know, you have someone who's trying to pick the election like they did last time. And I think that people hopefully see through that. I think folks are tired of a lot of the negativity, and I think there's a point at which it's just too much. I mean, it's just too much. But we just keep fighting every day. And look, I don't have you know, a group that's giving me that much money. I don't have the paper. But I've been a fighter my whole life. I fought for everything I've had in life. I had a difficult upbringing as a childhood that unfortunately is being drug into the mayor's race. But we worked hard. We worked hard. When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, but we worked hard and we took care of folks. I was a janitor in high school. I got up at 4 a.m. every morning and I cleaned that theater before school. I went to college on a scholarship, but I had to work. I drove forklifts in a lumberyard. I worked hard. I fought every day. In the Marine Corps, I gave it everything I had for 10 years, from 97 to 2007. I gave it everything I had, split between active and reserve status. In the legislature, I got up every day and I fought for San Diegans, for education, for protecting children. And if I'm your mayor, no one will fight harder for you. And so all I can do is go out every single day, all day long for the next 16 days and tell the truth and talk about the type of city that I want and have faith that at the end of the day, we'll have enough support to get us through. Yes, sir.
Following up on your comments that you were going to spend a year or so, I heard, making a list of priorities, and then you were going to follow up that with a conversation about how to pay for these. Is that going to require raising taxes?
Well, every option's on the table. Every option's on the table. The question was, how do we pay for the infrastructure that's there? Now, I mean, I'd love to stand here and go, you know what we're going to do is we're going to, and we are going to squeeze every efficiency out of the general fund. We are. But right now, the numbers that get put out to spend out of the money we have barely maintains the broken system we have now. It doesn't move us forward. And so I think there's a lot of options. There's some state funding, there's federal funding, there's new market tax credits, there's existing money, there's reforms, there's all those types of things we can do. But we're going to have that honest conversation. And at the end of the day, if we want the city that we want, we're going to have to pay for it. Now, that's going to be a conversation with the public, and anything that would happen, the public would vote on. And we'll do that. And I think people will do this. I think if you provide a path and a vision and transparency and they know exactly what's happening, I think they're willing to do that. And I'm certainly willing to be honest about what it's going to take to do that. Or we can just keep maintaining what we have, and you'll have another candidate for mayor 7 years from now. We'll be talking about the same things and the same issues, and I think that's the opportunity to show some leadership and go out and do it. So, yeah, every option would be on the table. Yes, ma'am.
Last question.
Okay. Is that you guys or me? Okay. I would say longer. Yes, ma'am.
You've recently changed parties and have shifted many of your views. One thing that you advertise is your ability to bring both parties together and pass laws such as Chelsea's Law. But Chelsea's Law was passed before you changed parties. How do you plan on moving public opinion when you yourself have changed parties and have demonstrated that you don't agree with other parties' ideas anymore?
Well, I would say a couple of things. I would say Chelsea's Law was passed when I was a Republican in a Democratic-controlled legislature. I mean, it's a Democrat-controlled legislature. One of my closest friends was the Speaker of the Assembly, John Perez, who helped me tremendously as we got that done. Every piece of legislation I got out of the legislature had more Democratic votes than Republican votes. And not all of them had Republican votes, but a great number of them did. And I think that I demonstrated over time that ability, though, to take an issue, to build a coalition, and your coalition is different on every issue. One of the problems in politics today, and you see this bearing out in this race, if somebody disagrees with you, I mean, they literally treat you like the enemy. Like the enemy. I mean, you see it, you get in the mailbox every day. Why bring a different perspective? I fought in a war, I've seen an enemy. We could just disagree. I don't have to be mad at you. We'll just say we just view this one differently. And when you bring that approach, then you preserve the ability to work together on the next thing. And I think that that's a very, very different approach. And, for folks who wonder about the party switch, I always point them to Democratic leaders who know me best. Governor Jerry Brown. I worked with Governor Jerry Brown on a number of issues. And that's why he came out and publicly supported me. We worked together to close loopholes that benefit out-of-state companies to invest in Californians. I would point you to our Attorney General, Kamala Harris. I worked closely with her as we negotiated the Homeowners' Bill of Rights. That's why she came out and endorsed me. I'd point you to the Lieutenant Governor, Gavin Newsom. Your Congressman, Scott Peters. Your Congressman, Juan Vargas. Your Senator, Marty Block. Your Senator, Ben Hueso. Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez. The Speaker of the Assembly, John Perez. The President Pro Tem of the Senate, Darrell Steinberg. And so many others who know me, who I've worked with for years, who have said, this is who we trust and support, and this is who we want to be our mayor. And I understand when you change, it's a difficult thing in today's world. I get that. It wasn't the easiest thing to do. But if you want leaders who are going to have open minds, who are going to listen to folks, who are not going to be too proud to admit when they were wrong, and whose focus is going to be moving us forward, then I think that matches my approach. If you want a mayor who's going to commit beforehand on future decisions and future issues, I'm probably not your guy. In the sense of one of the organizations that endorsed against me, we went in, we had a great discussion, great conversation, they endorsed against me. And one of their staff people said, do you know what your problem is? And I just said, well, how much time do you have? I said, I got a lot of problems. And he said, you ask too many questions. He said, it makes people nervous. The other guy doesn't ask questions, he just does what we want. Okay, that's a problem. I don't care what the group is. That's a problem. You need a mayor who's going to ask questions. You need a mayor you're going to have to convince. A mayor who's not just going to toe the line because, right, but who's going to ask those hard, difficult questions. Because in the grand spirit of closing of our wonderful sport of baseball, your mayor is the umpire. You have to fairly call balls and strikes. You have to do what's in the best interest of the city. You got to be willing to get booed occasionally. I wish we had had a mayor when we were underfunding pension funds at the request of the business community and labor who had said no. That may be what is expedient for the moment, but it's not what's going to make sure we have the funds to invest in our city. When we were having a real conversation about clean water and complying with the Federal Clean Water Act, I wish we'd had a mayor who had said we're not going to delay. When we had someone who said, look, we have a real problem in public safety. We're eroding officers, we don't have enough stations, we have to make this a higher priority. I wish we'd had a mayor who said that's going to be the priority. Because the city of San Diego can't say that they didn't have any money. Because they found hundreds of millions of dollars for projects. They had enough money. They didn't have a priority and a will. And I will be a mayor that will stand up for what I think is right for the whole city. Regardless of your party, or regardless of maybe even you changed your party. Thank you very, very much for having me. I enjoyed being with you this morning. Thank you.